T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
When I was young, I used to bump crossroads at the intersection. Simile syllables rip them faster than a millisecond. Opposite of the pulling guard, hit them with the misdirection. These rappers stink, somebody get them a fresh breath mint. These boys rookies like orientation with 10 freshmen. Spitting whack writtens, good riddance, that's a death sentence. Defend the throne, Polamalu with the interception. Gun laws non-existent, unlimited Smith & Wessons. I put on for my poly people across the globe. A small number, but we worth more than a pot of gold. My first love was a Kush blunt and an Optimo. Until I met my baby, I told Jane, you gotta go. Grow from seed, flow poetry, family straight. Never catch me with a groupie hoe, that's a sad mistake. Hit the studio, late music real people can relate to. No matter how good you do, some people still gon' hate you. Stay faithful, this is fate, I was born and made to. Captain of your own ship,
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the 2-on-1, a fantasy sports podcast. I'm your commish, Tommy Moe, and you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at 2on1FFB. And today, I'm bringing you another off-season podcast presented by the Undroppables network of podcasts and brought to you by AnalystDepot.com. They are making fantasy analysis easy with all the tools you need to create custom player rankings and player data, all with the help of Projection AI. So on today's show, we're going to talk about rookie prospects like we have been all offseason, but specifically analyzing rookie prospects using analytics. And if you listened to this show before, you know I'm a big film guy. That's what I know. I know how to turn on the film, watch tape. That's what I do. I'm not a numbers cruncher guy, but I'm trying to get better. And I'm trying to bring you resources and people to help you get better. Also using AnalystDepot.com, another resource to help you get better analytics to make your process better. So joining me today are two hosts of the best analytics gurus in the game who I brought here to school us all up on why analytic models can make a better predictors for finding fantasy studs. So first up is one of the rising stars in the community who combines his analytical background, quick wit to make some amazing fantasy football content. He's the co-host of the Bunk Bed Breakdown show on YouTube and the leader of the Fantasy Football Wolfpack, his new Patreon page. You can find him on Twitter at Mike Me Up. What's up, Mike Lou? Welcome to the 2-on-1.
What's up, brother?
Thanks
for having me on the show. We've gone back and forth now a few times, so it's good to chop it up with you live.
Yeah,
fellow Californian, West Coast, Best Coast. Let's get it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. I love that. Once I found out your city, I was like, oh, he's a West Coast guy. Like, I like him even more. I already liked seeing all your tweets. Your content's fire, man. The show's really great. What's up with the new Patreon page? How's that working out?
Dude, it's bumping, man. I didn't really think it would get this big, if I was being honest. When I launched, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get 30, 40, 50 people chop it up with me, and it'll be a good time. And we're at 220 now. I think we have 200 something in the Discord. I launched it, I guess almost 2 months ago now, in the beginning of March. So, it's awesome. What I really like about it, though, is, there's no bullshit in there. We get away from the toxic nature of Twitter, and people get into just good old-fashioned football debates, man. Nobody insults one another, and people are building each other. I know some cool guys in there. Shout out to a couple of my Patreon members. Got 4Shot in there who took my ranks and tried to build that into like a trade value spreadsheet, and someone else built on top of that. So there's a lot of cool stuff like that going on. So I'm super happy with it. I'm happy I started it, and happy to be still part of under the BDG umbrella, but just rocking like a different flavor as a dynasty. So it's been a good ride.
That's rad. That's super cool. And then how long's that show been going on for YouTube, the Bunk Bed Breakdowns? Is it almost 2 years now?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we started in January of since pre-pandemic, right? So almost like 2 years now. We started that together. We have I don't know, couple, maybe 100 something episodes on there. Noah, who's my co-host, we actually stopped doing the combined show. We started just doing like solo stuff because Noah's like killing the NBA Top Shots content, and he's putting out like really, really dope short form videos. And then, I'm focusing on the Market Watch Monday segment, which I started probably like halfway through it. I'm on like episode like 40 or 40 something like that. So it's been a good ride. So that's almost coming up on a year now. So I'm excited to kind of get that going.
So if there are people out there for some reason that might not follow you, don't know you, don't know your background, but one thing that I've been doing with all my guests that have come on that been big film grinders is trying to provide some of their background so people understand like this is why actually you should listen to this guy talk, should listen to him when it comes to watching tape, because there's so many people that say they watch tape, right? But who do you really want to watch? But for the analytics side, like again, for people that don't know you, what's your background that brings your point of view to your analytical models, or how you're evaluating these prospects?
Yeah, I mean, I come from a background in finance, so I started off my career as an accountant, like auditor, and then I moved into becoming an investment banker. So I did worked on M&A deals for close to a decade across a couple of different banks, and then from there I went to a couple startup companies. I work at a startup now in their finance department. So I've always been kind of like a numbers guy. I graduated with a math degree, undergrad in math at University of Waterloo. Shout out to my Canadian homies right there. But yeah, I've always been numbers focused, man. So playing up to that Asian stereotype, we're nerds. So that's kind of how I always approach things. I always approach it from a very analytical, numbers based frame of thinking. So kind of just brought that same mentality over to fantasy. And I wouldn't even consider myself a true analytical guy because I'm not really a galaxy brain. I'm not one of these guys that are building R models and running regressions, all this shit. What I am good. I mean, I'm not even as fractionally as smart as Peter Howdy, but what I am good at is siphoning through all the data and looking at stuff and figuring out what matters and identifying trends that I think matter. And then, that kind of helps me stay a little bit ahead of the game in terms of forecasting future trends and, strategies and applying the game theory aspect to fantasy football, which is mostly what I do.
Right on. Yeah, that's why I love interacting with you too, because I know I could just ask you, hey man, what does this mean? What are these numbers meaning? And you have a great way of breaking it down in a very layman's terms type of way that makes it just easy for people to understand. Because I mean, like anything, you can have the best analytics, research, takes in the world, but if you can't deliver the message, people aren't understanding what you're saying, then what's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of one of those great analytical minds, the brains out there that are running great R regression models, making us all just put to shame when it comes to number crunching, is one of the OGs in the analytics game. He's the host of the Dynasty Crossroads podcast, a senior writer for DLF, and also has a fantastic Patreon and YouTube channel himself. You may know him on Twitter as Pa Howdy. What's up, Peter Howard? Welcome to the 2-on-1. Oh, you're muted. There you go. What's up, buddy?
I'm a professional. Yeah. A lot to deal with there. There's Michael trying to win arguments by default by saying, obviously, he's so much smarter. So, lowering the bar. So he basically can say anything and make it sound great. And then there's you calling me an OG, which, I've got to go get a tattoo now. Apparently, I need that. I'm an OG in something. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm from Long Beach. So, we don't get that title out lightly, but you qualify as an OG.
No, I get it, man. I'm honored. I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm here. How you doing? Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I know you were streaming earlier, so I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule today to come talk to me and Mike Liu as well to, like I said, school us up, us film grinders, us tape we think we know what we're talking about. It's always the tape versus analytics beef on Twitter. But as one of the great analytics minds in the game, but also a fantastic follow and person to interact with on Twitter. Peter, why, if for those that don't know you, what's your background in analytics and why do you have such a great mind for fantasy football?
Don't have a great mind for it. My background in this is going great, don't you think? I'm doing really well, smooth. No, sorry, I got literally just as we came on, my wife was like, "I'm feeling really sick." By the way, I'm like, okay, I'll just. So I got that in my mind, but I really don't have a
similar situation over here, buddy.
Sorry, but I really don't have a background in analytics, and I try to tell everyone that as much as I can, as well as the fact I'm definitely not smart. Like, I get the accent confuses some people, but like just a guy who plays fantasy football and wanted to do a little bit better. And since I come from a background where like literally didn't play the sport, and also having watched and played sport a little bit at least, like I don't think I see or notice things that are distinct or understand it when I watch it better than other people. And so I was just looking for a quick way in to try and understand what the game was and trying to find an edge, trying to find a way of beating my friends. That was it. Yeah. And so numbers were just a more natural, is a weird word, but path to that, because I literally, like I didn't know, is 100 receiving yards good in a game or a year? Like I didn't know. So I was just looking for a basic understanding of it. And so I just came at it from that angle. I'd never even played fantasy before, and it just kind of started spiraling. Increasingly, you have to, the more data you accrue, the more you have to accrue. That's a weird word to use, but there it is. You keep needing more to answer your questions, and eventually, some guys on a podcast like, he's a genius. Obviously, I'm like, huh? I keep needing more stuff to answer different questions, and that's really how I ended up here. Like, I wanted to know. Like, it seems real basic to me. Like, what have players done before they did something else? Because it's not like I can predict the future, but like I can know what's happened in the past, and that gives me some guide to knowing what might happen more often in the future. And the minute you start tracking like receiving yards, people are like, no, it's about dominator. How do you calculate that? Well, you need touchdowns. Okay, I guess I better go get some touchdowns. But then what do you do with that? So you have to go find the formula and then figure out how to calculate stuff. And it just kind of spirals. That's basically I fell down a rabbit hole. Yeah, I just fell down a rabbit hole, and people keep asking me questions. I'm like, So I go and look up the answer. So yeah, that's me. I just lost most of the time, and I think I come across that way pretty effectively, right?
Well, you're doing a great job again on Twitter in the fantasy football community. That a lot of it is in America, whereas you really just need an accent, and we think you're a genius because it's different than how we sound. So
I think how smart you all sound to me, man. Like, you all got a different accent.
But I love that it's you modestly put it, how it grew out of a need for you to just find a way to get better, and it just grew and grew and grew, because I feel like that is more on the average players like side of things, how a lot of us just grew in the community and the industry, or just even just doing our own stuff with fantasy football, was our own need to try to win and try to get better.
I think the best of us, right? You can have other cores and other motivations, but I personally find those people more fun because they're going through the same thing. It's like, I'm not a genius. I'm definitely not trying to prove I'm a genius or break sports or get popular, and definitely not making any money, but I do want to own my friends. Like, I think we all have similar motivations, so we understand each other.
Yeah. I know for me, Twitter was a place to go and get an edge on my league mates in my home league, that they weren't on Twitter yet. They weren't getting the same information, and now that I've, been on there for a while, and have some following, they're now, I'm losing that edge. That's what you put out that information and you want to share it, and now you're losing the edge that you came here to get. But I mean, it's all part of the game. And
I tell you, that's kind of a problem, because I joined a really interesting lead format. I was just interested. John Bosch is running it, so I shouldn't have signed up. It's always too much work. But we're in the chat, and I'm like, hey, did everyone notice this? And someone was like, shh, like, for real, shh. And I was like, oh, all the shark is gone at a certain point, because you just used to going, hey, look at this. This is really interesting. Everyone see this over here? Yeah. I'm like, dude. I'm like, I have no shark left. I'm all content creator now. It's just, I don't know. It became fun in its own right. Did anyone notice that receiving work or rushing work for quarterbacks is really important? And then, 5 years down the line, drafting all rushing quarterbacks in the top 6, and everyone's like, damn it. Your shark just kind of disappears at a certain point with content creation.
Yeah, and now Konami quarterback is, a everyday, everyone knows that term now. Everyone knows what you're talking about when you're saying Konami. Yeah. They know what you're going for. And it's affecting the rankings. You see the top quarterbacks and they're all running quarterbacks. And, why is one reason that Mac Jones, isn't a top 3 because he's slow and he's not going to run? Like, that's just the easiest answer out there, because it's become such a thing that you got to run. But yeah, it's funny how the more information, like anything, the more information that's out there, the more edge you need to try to find an edge somewhere. And so that's why, again, I wanted to bring you guys on here to talk analytics and help us find an edge. Guys that are not as smart as you guys and definitely don't know how to either look at the numbers or manipulate the numbers to find what the answers that we're looking for. But, overall, why, you kind of said it both with your background, like what draws you more towards analytics, but how has it helped you been successful in the fantasy football industry, or even just beating your league mates? Is it do you find your process has really been that refined over the years that it's nailed down? You know what you're doing. You just need to change the numbers each year with new data that comes in.
I mean, I can't speak for Peter, but
if you want to, bro.
I can say that my process definitely isn't, perfect or anything. Every year I play, I find something else that I can do. And I don't really just approach it from a numbers perspective. Like, we go back and forth, film versus analytics all the time, and it's a pretty silly debate because at the end of the day, ideally you want to use both. But I'll put it this way: I think the barrier to entry for someone wanting to learn the analytics and number side is super, super low because of someone like Peter. He's got like tutorials on YouTube. He's got, live streams where it literally teaches you how to do this stuff. And it's not fucking rocket science, right? It's sorry, it's part of my French. It's not rocket science. And, you can do it. Like anyone can do it, right? But with film, it's like there's two major barriers, right? One is all 22 film. And, people hold on to that shit like tighter than their family jewels, and all these guys aren't even willing to share it, right? Whereas you look at the analytics community, we're constantly sharing everything. Peter's sharing spreadsheets, everyone's sharing everything because, the more you share, the more smart people out there look at it and poke holes in your arguments. Whereas like I feel like the film side is like, I'm gonna hold the all 22 film. It's like my it's my secret sauce, right? So that's one barrier to entry. Two is like I don't fucking understand any of that stuff. Like I could watch it for 3 hours and it wouldn't matter because I can't do any of it. And then the last barrier to entry is like you got to spend hours and hours and hours and hours grinding film. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to do good on the analytics side, you still got to put in the hours. Like look at Peter, right? Look at myself. We're always constantly grinding.
I used to look like a human.
Yeah, we're always constantly grinding. Right? But if you spend the time, you can get there. And I think that's at the end of the day what it comes down to, and why I feel like numbers is advancing so much faster than film is because there's so many more people doing it, and it's so easily to pick up that it's just naturally going to get better. And until film gets more open and more transparent with everything, I think that's the drawback with film.
I would echo what Michael said because he's smarter than me in every way. And also I would add, like, I don't know if it's just me, but like I've never watched a college or an NFL player play and not gone, wow. Like they're all amazingly talented compared to, like I guess again where I'm just my point of reference is off when I watch something. 'Cause the only thing I think we all do this, like amount of money or a distance is hard to comprehend unless you have something to relate it to. So like how many football fields is that, or how many walks down the driveway? So like 1,000,000 miles doesn't mean anything to me, but 50 seems kind of a lot, and so when I watch college players play, or obviously I don't watch, or NFL players play, my only frames of reference is how does a human being do that thing? Like like the worst college player impresses the crap out of me, or like Cole Beasley's. You seen him dunk a basketball? I didn't think humans could do that from the distance. And so like just because I'm bad again, I think some people are better or worse in it, and you can practice anything to get better at it. But I think my innate point of reference just means I can't. It all looks good, man. I've watched Philip Dorsett tape and gone, that guy's gonna hit. Like there's no way, because he's really fast.
Right. So do you find the analytics then the numbers help temper or give you a better frame of reference?
Well, they're
than
cold
what you're
and I'm
just able to see?
feeling much
Yeah.
like me, so I think we have a relationship. But no,
Simpatico.
that's the thing with analytics, because I don't have a background, and again, it's something you could store up. But I'm a quick, easy, lazy guy, and with numbers, you can collect a bunch, and then you can write a little thing, which is just basically in Excel. It's wonderful because it's basically if you did any kind of algebra in school, it's the exact same format, and you say, what is the average for this type of player, and it pulls it up, and you're like, oh, that's hot. That number's higher than that number. That's good.
That's a good thing. Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
but without like a background in, like Michael was saying, having ground actual tape and not YouTube highlights or just watch the
Right.
games you're interested in. Like your point of reference needs to be fleshed out there, and that's I think part of what like Jake, who used to be my co-host before he literally quit fantasy football to get away from me. I'm really annoying to take grinders, I think. And he just had experience and had done the work. And so when he watched a player play, and he couldn't always articulate it, but he could tell me that is better than you would normally see. And I'd be like, that's neat. Cool. I don't know what to do with it, but I trust that you have done that work, if you know what I mean.
Right. Which I thought made it a fantastic podcast to have, a pod have both takes on both sides, and from two people that are great at expressing, those takes in a really easily digestible way. So,
it's gone downhill since he left. I hear you. Okay.
It was my audition. I was just saying, you need another film grinder on there to help you out. But no,
I'm too scared to have another co-host. I don't want to run another one out of the industry. Like, he's a golf now, so I don't know what I did, but
he's living the dream. Once he got that pro card, he was set. Mike, one thing that has come up is the arguments between the two. In your experience, do you find, because analytics can, like Peter said, don't have feelings, who's better at debating an argument, between analytics and versus film? Who tends to get a little bit more sensitive between the two?
Everyone's bad. Everyone's sensitive. I don't care where you're from. Analytics.
I think that's just me. He's
everyone's sensitive. I mean, Peter offends people on Twitter, and he's like one of the nicest guys around. So I mean, everyone's sensitive. I think I think everyone. That's not really a film versus analytics. That's just Twitter's a bunch of softies. You get on there. I like to poke the bear a lot because I think it's entertaining, and I'll go on there. I'll poke a bear and I'll see what happens. But if you talk shit to me, right? Like I'm just gonna throw back, and we're just gonna go at it and have some fun. As long as it's not malicious, like it doesn't matter, right? It's just we're playing a fake game at the end of the day. So I don't think anyone is particularly better at debating. I think it really comes down to individual, right? Like I have a ton of film people I respect. I surround myself with a lot of film people because that's an area that I suck at. I know nothing about what a route is or where the wide receiver should break his route and where the stems are. Like the only stems I know grow on fucking trees. So I surround myself with a lot of film people, and I've had great debates with guys like Angelo, right? He's very respectful. We're in DMs constantly going back and forth. We started off arguing about David Montgomery, but never like disrespectfully, like, yo, you're stupid. It's like, hey, like, why do you think that? Why do you think this? Yeah. So it just depends on who it is. I will say, I think the analytics is better framed for a debate because at the end of the day, the numbers are what they are, and you can have some context and you can have some stuff like the debate that Peter and JJ Zacharyson and all those guys had on Terrace Marshall a few days back. But at the end of the day, the numbers are the numbers, right? You can't argue. The guy either produced or he didn't produce. Now you can create excuses or reasons for why he didn't produce, but at the end of the day, the facts are the facts. So the numbers really tell no tales. Like beings tell tales. They frame the numbers and they cut stuff to show what they want to see. And I've done that before as well to kind of support my views. But at the end of the day, I think if you really want to have a very constructive debate, like analytics versus analytics, like it's numbers versus numbers, so it's really factual. Whereas film, it's like, well, I saw this and then I saw that, and it's like I can ask 5 film grinders on 5 different days about the same player and I'll get 5 different answers on the same play. So that's where it's like, I feel like for a film perspective, it's really, really subjective. And that's why I respect it so much, because the guys that are good at it and they add their subjectivity to it, is a big value add. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like how I look at it. It's not really one side's better debating or the other. It's just, everyone's soft, and you just got to pick the right people to follow and right people to learn from.
I had to ask that question. I just see the interaction sometimes, and I think because the film guys don't, because we don't have those numbers to just say these are the numbers, this is what it is. The tale has to be spun sometimes a little bit more, and sometimes that involves a lot of imagination. And if you're getting told you're wrong and you don't have a real concrete reason to explain yourself besides this is what I saw,
yeah.
It
is what it is.
Yeah, they tend to get a little more sensitive, in my opinion, because I've been in those debates. Like, no, it should be like this, and like, no, it should be like this. Like, all right, cool, whatever. So let's move on to the next thing, because we're just gonna go nowhere, with it. And at least I have a hard time arguing with analytics guys that really know their stuff. Not saying arguing, debating with analytics guys that really know their stuff, because at the end of the day, if those are the numbers, there's not much to say against it. You might be seeing a different thing. It might have a different outcome based on what you're seeing. But like you said, the numbers are what they are. And so looks like Peter had to step out for a second. But Mike, when you're analyzing and looking and evaluating these prospects, I guess are and you mentioned you're not just looking at analytics, but for rookies coming in, do you have a model that you use that helps you formulate your rankings, and how much of it does involve watching film?
Yeah, I don't really build models personally. I kind of just look at various thresholds. And Peter, I know Peter has a model himself. I just kind of look at the thresholds and things that matter. And then I also speak to a lot of film guys, and I try and marry the two together and then apply my own subjectivity. And the other thing is I'm trying to project values. I think that's a little bit of a different approach than most people. I think most people try and get there, right? They try and project who's going to hit, and usually whoever hits, right, will get value. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to project value increases. And there's a myriad of factors that go in there. There's hype for guys like Kyle Pitts. There's a bunch of other stuff that goes in there. So I don't do models, but I look at people that build models, because I'm like, wow, these guys are smart. They build their models, and their models show me this. So let me look at what their model is telling me, and then let me look at what some of my film friends are telling me, and then from there, that's kind of how I construct my rankings. I look for guys to check boxes. So I start off with the full universe, and I say, these are the guys that check all the boxes. So in this class, that's Ja'Marr Chase, one guy, right? And then I look at the other guys, here are the holes they have. Which holes matter more, in my opinion, right? Which holes matter more in someone else's opinion? And then that's kind of how I go about building stuff. I don't really have a model. Like I said, that's why I'm not a true analytics guy. I'm a fraud, I'm a guy that just looks at stuff and rides on the shoulders of other smart people to make my own decisions. If all the smart people went away, I would have nothing. So I'm a guy that's just analyzing the markets. I'm a stock trader. You can think about me that way.
Hey, if all the smart guys went away, then you'd still be at the next up on the list. We'd still be safe anyway. So Peter, when I was asking Mike about how he's evaluating these prospects, is he really building things into a model that he's honed over time, or how much of it is film based for him? And kind of same question to you, because I know we have a couple guys on our team, on the Undroppables team, they're great with analytics, but they've been working on their models and they're just plugging things in as they go. Peter, I know you have some great resources on your Patreon, but yeah, I guess kind of give some insight into how you're formulating your rankings for these rookie prospects.
I have been playing around with models for the last couple of years, and it's mostly to like anything else, to understand what the hell that means. And just based on the way we're using the word model here, I can offer some insight. There are basically different mathematical formulas you can use to try and predict a certain value. So all models are trying to predict something in particular. Now, the ones I've chose is just average PPR points over the first 3 years, because I know this might seem like a weird starting point, but if you were to look back, how do you know which player is Justin Jefferson and which way is Jerry Jeudy? If you look at yards, they're actually pretty, well, not between Jefferson and Jeudy, but they're actually pretty close. And if you look really, because since most players break out year 2 and then there's a pretty good hit rate in year 3, you really don't just want to look at the first year. So what kind of number can we plug in to describe who is the best and who is the worst? Who are we seeking and who are we trying to avoid? And honestly, there's no clear value, because if you sort classes by that number, like I use the average points per game over the first 3 years, it's a pretty good ranking, but it's not like great. It's not perfect. Like Calvin Johnson hits the top, nice. But at the same time, you're not always going to get Calvin Ridley because he had a slightly slower start than someone like Justin Jefferson. So it's a pretty good ranking by class. But looking across all years, like you see some notable, well, I wanted that guy by year 3, and I wanted that guy by year 2, and this guy I wanted from day 1. And so that's the first thing I learned about models, which was interesting. I needed some way to gauge who is the rookie I'm chasing, because there's no number that you can really say, oh, that's what we're specifically chasing, because you could also look at value, like players that jump up in ADP after their first year. Surely that's something we're seeking as well. Or players that drop, like Tyler Boyd. I recently wrote up an article about wide receiver breakouts, and something that's very noticeable when you look at the history is that Tyler Boyd dropped 10 rounds in startup ADP after his first year. But the guy got 669, I think, nice, receiving yards year 1, which is actually a really good rookie season. So why did we drop him 10 rounds?
Right.
No idea. And so you've got constant noise in whatever number you use. And I know this is really long and boring, but
I'm fascinated.
That's analytics. So like even that measure is off. Like it doesn't capture everything we're looking for. And so, but it was interesting to learn that. And most of my models are trying to predict points per game, and none of them come out to the points per game you want in your fantasy. But it told me a little bit about what models are trying to do. I don't like rank by, I do improve, I try to improve my model every year. We have at least one class to add to the history of stats. So hopefully the more you show it, the better it gets at learning. Now, obviously I don't add last year's class because I haven't played 3 years. So they have to have played 3 years before they get added to it. But also I get better. I like to think I get better, and I'm collecting some stats I wasn't before. And so like, I want to test them and see how they're good in the model. And the next thing was, how do you create a model? And there's a whole bunch of mathematical formulas you could use. The one that I found easiest in Excel was the one that everyone always talks about, which is R squared. And linear regression models. And I'm going to bore the crap out of you with those two things, but I had to learn what they are and what they do and how they work. And the other thing about my models that I know and why I don't rank by it, to go back to Mike's point, that I take in lots of information, not just a model, and I actually like to look at a player's production, literally go and look. Like I said, I'm the tape watcher of analytics, because I don't just use a number. Like I literally want to see it unfold. I want to put it on a graph. I want to see how it changes year over year, and then compare it to how his teammates were changing year over year, just kind of to get a sense of how they made those numbers, but obviously not seeing them do it, because that would be exciting and interesting. That you guys get that. I get to stare at numbers. But the other thing I started to learn with it, where was I going with that? Is a limitation and how successful we can get at predicting points per game, and how little of it we can actually capture. And so what that triggered me onto trying to learn models was I moved away from the idea that we're going to predict or accurately guess. I just wanted to know which stats were better at predicting what. It occurred to me, like, yards per team pass attempt, or percentage of receiving yards, or overall yards, which is like, which one is more important and which one is more important for what. And so instead of trying to create the perfect model or even thinking about hits or misses, I just wanted to know which stats were useful and useful for what, because everything's got use, you watch. And so there'll be a similar thing there, like watching them against a cornerback that isn't going to be in the NFL next year doesn't tell you as much, but it tells you something. What happens when the competition is low? I'm guessing there's some value you can get out of that versus watching them against, the number one cornerback in this draft class.
Right.
And it's a similar process, like which is more useful? Are there some stats that are absolutely terrible for predicting points, but good for predicting likelihood? Like I've been in an argument recently about BMI. That's literally got no predictive power. No matter what test I have learned and then ran on it, like no matter what your BMI is, like literally, I think statistically, you'll be better at guessing how productive they're going to be in a points per game basis using the first initial of their first name. Like that has more power in predicting that points per game number. But it's very clear that there's a common player physique using BMI and other thresholds.
Yeah.
So the next step is, are you more or less likely? And I'm arguing with people about it right now because I don't think it makes you more likely. I just think, that's the common feature, but like players are drafted with lower BMIs
and still do
a lot less. So isn't it kind of proportional? And so just trying to understand that BMI has use, because obviously most players have this thing. So that's important. But and then you take it a step further. So I do that, I guess, is my simple explanation for what I think of models. I use them, I look at them, but then I really like to actually look at their production, like on a physical, literally run my eyes over it kind of a thing. Compare it to past players is my big thing. How much does that look like the types of players I've been targeting? And where points per game is an imperfect measure, I like to literally visually look at it on a graph or something. And then next, it's honestly other people's opinions. It's not, I don't use tape. I watch football because I like watching sport, but it's not part of my process. Again, because my point of reference is off. I don't notice things that other people don't notice that have particular relevance. And so instead, I go listen to Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies. I'm like, Zach, tell me about what you see on this. It used to be Jake, and then he quit and started golf. You've also got Travis May, who's some kind of unholy merger of both, as if that's possible. And so I read his articles, and I talk to him whenever he posts something on Twitter. And it's like using draft capital. Like, because a player's drafted in the first round, so I drafted him and he hit. I mean, I didn't do anything for that. They spent millions of dollars trying to draft players accurately. And you just kind of borrow that signal. And it's the same thing with everyone else. I'll listen to Mike. I'll listen to Nick over there. Big Dog's Gotta Eat as well. I'll listen to Zachary. I'll listen to anyone. And over time, like everyone else, you develop voices that you trust or you understand better what they're trying to say more. Right. And then you just kind of roll that up into some balanced equation, as an analytics nerd, that's the way I think of it, in your head, and a ranking order pops out. It's not a trusting a model. It's more trying to understand what you can about that player, and then listening to other people, because God knows I'm not going to be right. So I need other people's information,
No, and for, I think film writers, like, we need to hear this. I think when we get into those arguments, they're like, oh, the model's foolproof. That's like our from our caveman limited, understanding of numbers. Just like what's the direction that is this one the good side of the graph? Is it going this way or
I think it can be more or less that way, to be fair. There are, like, I don't trust my models because I know the guy who made it and he's an idiot. But I mean, Matt Spencer, now working for Rotoviz, like he's a genuinely bright guy. Like Mike is too, don't get me wrong. But Matt didn't learn this stuff for this. Like, he codes and he's done statistics. That's what his stuff is in. You can literally find PhDs in statistics playing fantasy football, and so they'll lean more towards creating accurate. And so you'll find people more that way. But that's you asked about how my process has changed, and there's this arc. It's like the Dunning-Kruger arc, but you eventually learn something, you get so excited about it, you try and go all in, and then the further you get into anything that whether it's tape or anything else, you eventually realize the limitations of it, and you start to back off. Like, I believed in Breakout Age so fucking hard when I first read about that on Rotoviz, and it's got value, but the further you get into it, the more you're like, well, it doesn't rank well. It's not like Corey Davis is better. It's a better indicator. And so you learn this balancing act of valuing something, but not going, but again, appreciating other people's opinions, because you need to.
No, it's great. Because like I said, I feel like even my questions, I'm like, asking, and you're like, no, it's not just that, because that's what, like I said, where my non-analytics brain comes from. It's just thinking like, oh man, you guys just like must pull out these crazy equations, from your head. It all makes sense, and that helps you, pick the right guys, get the right players, and always be right. And then anytime you're not right, we're gonna pull up some stats where you're not right, and some film that shows, oh yeah, you missed that guy. But what you're saying too about BMI definitely makes me feel better as a Devontae Smith truther, not caring about his BMI, because that guy plays like he's way bigger than what he shows on the numbers. But We're
I actually love that comparison because that's the other thing. If I provide any value, it's pointing out that some things that seem obvious aren't.
Yeah.
Like it seems
Yeah.
obvious that this matters, but then when
Yeah.
you go and look, you're like, oh,
right.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's so much of that. It's like, it seems weird to be that guy and being, I've got the analytics nerd moniker after my name, but I'm like, this is usually a film. It feels like a film grinder's take, but if you've been weaned by the college system and done well, and then you're weaned by the draft and all the millions they put in to try and draft good players, then we've probably filtered enough by size. Like if you survive all of that
Yeah.
and still get a good draft capital going to a reasonable landing spot, then you're probably good at that size. If you know what I mean, probably more likely to be, but yeah, that's my feeling on it anyway. It sounds like it makes so much sense. Like you're tiny and it's the NFL and there are literal giants in the
It's
NFL.
a big man's game.
Just
Yeah.
pancaking you.
You're just too small. Sorry. It's like, it's
It
gonna happen.
seems to make
Right.
sense.
You're
And
right.
for us, definitely true. But like Brandon Cooks makes it, man. Drew Brees makes it work. Russell Wilson makes it work. I mean,
There's always someone. Yeah. And so people tell me, when I'm high on Devontae Smith, it's like, oh, you're hoping he's the outlier that makes it. Like, I guess so. If that's what that means, if it doesn't fit in the model, I like what I see on tape. I'm just going to roll with it. But you want to, like I said, you want to get edge on what you're not good at. You want to get better at what you're not good at. So you want to bring in people like you guys, bring in the analytics models to help.
Look, I mean, models and numbers, man. Like at the end of the day, they don't make decisions for me, right? And it's like Peter said, it like they don't spit out ranks for you. They just tell you where to look. You find some players, and they're like Jalen Waddle underperformed, Terrace Marshall underperformed. Why did they underperform? Right. And then I look across my film compatriots like, wow, Terrace Marshall's a freaking stud. And I'm like, okay, well, the numbers don't say that he's a stud. Yeah. So let's look at why he underperformed there. And so at the end of the day, no analytics or numbers based analyst is going to be worth anything if all they're doing is taking the numbers and telling you if this player is good or not. Right. You gotta apply some professional judgment. And I think the thing that analytics can help film people do, which film people are very hesitant to do, especially ones with Scout in their name on Twitter, is, they refuse to accept that analytics is a value add. They're like, no, like film, the tape never lies. Film tells no tales. This is my story and I'm going with it. Right. That's their very hard and fast stance. But if you really open your eyes, right, if you open your eyes and broaden your perspective, and for you, for example, for Devonta Smith, analytics tells you there's maybe these red flags, right? Peter tells you BMI doesn't matter. Maybe his later breakout matters. Maybe it doesn't matter. But the important part is you have the numbers there to show you where to look. And then it's up to you, right? And then you apply your film on top and say, look, I know the numbers say this, but based on what I've seen in film, based on my experience, I don't think I recognize that risk, but this is the bet I'm willing to make. And I think that's end of the day, that's all you can hope for. And that'll make you a better fantasy player is not ignoring the risks. You know, when it comes to Terrace Marshall, not being like, oh, Terrace Marshall has no risks because he played with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. They're the greatest ever. Therefore, that completely wipes away the fact they didn't break out. That's not the right approach to me. The right approach is more so like, hey, look, these flags exist, right? These flags, it does make him a much riskier bet, but I'm willing to make it because of X, Y, and Z.
So it's literally the way I said it before. It's like it's not fun. Like the job is to know the bet you're making, and then if it doesn't work out, like you still had your fun. I bet on Jalen Reagor freaking hard last year, and it didn't work. I know why I made the bet. I know the risks that were involved, and so I don't have to be like, what happened? And like I can say BMI doesn't matter, but like I'm in some DMs right now where people using words I do not understand, pretending I know what they're talking about, and they say it does. So like, don't take my word for it. That's just. But I know the bet I'm making. I'm betting on a guy that's not a common profile based on physical makeup, but I believe that you don't excel like that in college and then get drafted for no reason. Like maybe you're good at your size. And then if he doesn't work out, like at least I don't have to wonder what happened. Like I knew the bet I was making. And I think Mike puts it really well there. Like do all you can to understand like how often that happens, how much that compares. But at the end of the day, have fun. Go get your freaking guy is I think the way we traditionally say it.
So speaking of getting your guys and using your analytics minds to help with some of those rankings, we've been going through quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver rankings on the last few shows. Tight end isn't a super deep class usually. There's definitely some studs there, but why don't we real quick just run through the tight end class, maybe even just the top 5, who you guys have, who you have ranked and a bit why, or maybe even someone that, because of what you've seen analytics wise, you're higher on than others.
I love
Mike,
the way you save tight end for the analytics guys. Like, just throw him tight end. No one cares.
I threw on tight ends for you guys because I want to talk about all the other stuff besides like positional rankings. Like, who cares? Let's just talk about these so we can say we talked about them. But I just want to hear you guys talk about why you do what you do and how you think, because at least for me and hopefully for people out there listening, it helps me kind of better understand your guys' way of thinking, and again, to help add that to my game and shape the way I do things. But I know Mike has to take off pretty soon, so I wanted to start with him and his rankings and see if he has someone that's a hot take of who maybe a little bit higher than others.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. There's really not much spice here. I mean, tight end. I'm gonna be honest with you. I spend like no time on tight end before the NFL draft. Just like how I spend no time on sleepers before the NFL draft. 'Cause I think it's a giant waste of time. Like I said, I don't watch film. So
yeah.
I mean, I watch film for fun, but like not really as part of like a major process. I mean, everyone knows Kyle Pitts is really good, right? And then behind that, personally, I don't think there's that many studs. I think it's a lot of the same old shit. Tight ends gonna be a trash all around. But you got Pat Freiermuth, Hunter Long, and I really like Brevin Jordan, man. And this is why, like I said, this is where my film expertise burns me, because I watched him on film. Like, dude, this guy is freaking really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went out there and tested like Zach Moss. So, I basically pivoted off him really quick because, when you test that poorly, it means draft capital is probably not going to be in your favor. It really reminds me of last season. Again, this is why I don't do this anymore. Last season, I'm like, dude, Hunter Bryant is that dude. I watched this guy's film. I looked at his numbers. He's great everywhere. And then what does he do? He goes up and benches like less than I do, and then runs slower than Peter Howdy does. And then next thing we know, he goes undrafted. So like I'm tired of wasting too much time on that type of stuff. So all I know is, look, Kyle Pitts is a stud. Am I going to draft him everywhere? Probably not, because he's still a tight end. And then I'm going to let everyone else debate, the rest of that stuff, because I'm going to focus on, getting the top of my draft as right or as least wrong as possible. And then kind of just let the draft capital and the athletic testing do the talking for me for tight ends.
Oh, I love it. Like I said, it's not leaving it for you guys. I just, I feel like I have to talk. No, I just feel like for my audience, I have to at least touch on it, but I'm right there with you, Mike. I like Brevin Jordan. I didn't love the testing, but after that, it's like him and, I don't know, maybe Trey McKitty gets slipped in there somewhere, like top 5 or after. I don't know. But does it really matter? Not really. Outside of Kyle Pitts. But like I said, we had to touch on it. Peter, who, is there anything, that you can add to the tight end position that, maybe we should be considering someone a little bit higher, maybe a Kenny Yeboah, or someone like that?
I haven't looked at Yeboah yet. I rushed out some quick profiles just because I knew you were going to ask me about him. I can add some things. One thing is that the tight end position is almost custom made to be anti-profilable by analytics, because most of the ones you're seeking, whatever hit group you look at, they didn't play full college seasons. They were basketball players. They played 1 year. They converted to tight end in the NFL. So there's not a lot of a great deal of history of data that you can compare players to, which is kind of the whole deal. And that makes it difficult. And then you've got even fewer that are actually Gronk, Graham, and Tony Gonzalez, which makes it even harder to actually seek out the one. If there was a perfect profile, I admit that Kyle Pitts would probably have it, but frankly, you would have captured most, and they mostly break out later in the NFL, which is also a problem. But you would have captured most just in looking at height, weight, and like 40 time. That's how you find Travis Kelce, Gronk, Graham. Like, they all fit that.
Right.
And the one thing I don't like about Kyle Pitts' profile is he doesn't fit that height and weight restriction. Like, he's a little undersized. But so is Evan Ingram, and so does Jordan Weed. So I guess he's in that category, and that's fine. I like that you shouted out Brevin Jordan. Brevin Jordan was a larger part of his team, just as a competitive conference. Then Kyle Pitts. He has lower numbers, counting stats, but if you look at the percentage, like he was a bigger part of that receiving offense.
Yeah.
And there's actually some signals to suggest that what we're looking for is a guy's ability to establish a large role. Volume is everything, kind of a thing.
Right.
So Brevin looks great, but he's also undersized. And Pat Ferriman, or Ferriman, whatever you say that name, I actually expected him to come out pretty well because he meets the size criteria, but he was actually under average based on his team, conference, and compared to hits. So, like, I don't know why he's a consensus 2 right now. Hunter Long's really productive, or decently productive compared to tight ends, I guess, and actually tested a little bit better, but I haven't quite got his pro day numbers locked in yet. And then there's a guy called Jake Ferguson I just started to look at, who also a little undersized. So it's a more interesting class than last year.
Yeah.
But it's really Pitts
Even
and then
that.
wait to see who does something in the draft or the NFL.
Right.
That's it.
So Mike Lou has to leave the show, but thank you so much, Mike, for stopping by to talk to me today. Before you go, do you want to just let people know where to find your Patreon and if you have any last free nuggets for the listeners?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks. Sorry about that, guys. I got a dip. I gotta eat dinner here. But yeah, you can find me at Mike Me Up with 2 P's on Twitter, patreon.com/OurPack. If you're a hardcore Dynasty gamer, want to play some game theory, get in there, talk shop. And wise piece before I go, man. Follow Peter Howdy, and then get into his spreadsheet, man. Free database to play around with. So probably I've always said it's the most valuable resource for anyone looking to get analytics. Just literally go on this Patreon, and then get that spreadsheet. So that's all I got. Thanks for
I would say it's free just for anyone that got scared off by the word Patreon.
Oh yeah.
Like it's not like pay me for it. But I actually agree with Wilhelm in the chat here, who says Mike is in fact the GOAT, and that's written on the internet. So Mike's clearly lying, and he is in fact the GOAT. Like I agree with that.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Take care.
Right, guys. Take it easy.
All right, later. Peter. So yeah, tight end rankings. I agree with you. After Pitts, I mean, unless I'm in that area of like, I don't know, 106 to 110. I mean, I don't think I'll be drafting too much Kyle Pitts. Definitely not going to go chase for him. And then everyone else. I like Brevin Jordan's tape, but besides that, I'm kind of with you. Especially in the Superflex league, I'll probably be trying to target Pitts or Jordan, and that's about it. But only if it's the right value. Definitely not going to be trying to chase.
Yeah, he's not going to be this year either, is he? He's not going to be the right.
Well, that's the hard part, right? Because everyone still forgets, or at least they're getting so caught up in the hype of Kyle Pitts that like he's still going to take time to mature and come to fantasy fruition, because that's just how it is at the position.
I don't know. Evan Ingram didn't. He's the one, right? And he's built more like Evan Ingram.
But then what?
I would say I do try to listen to other opinions, and the one thing is that Kyle Pitts is going to be the highest drafted tight end on average in rookie drafts since Evan Ingram. Like he's higher than Evan Ingram, and so there's a lot of reasons to believe that Kyle Pitts is going to be something different. Right? And I don't want to ignore that. I try to beat ADP, not ignore it.
Yeah.
And so maybe like he doesn't have to do much to. Tight ends typically on average maintain their value. They are drafted in the same round in startups the following year, for example. So it's a low risk bet as well. And some like Jacob Rickrow pointed, he thinks, at least, I don't know, I agree, but he said if you know that Jamar Chase is DeAndre Hopkins, and that Kyle Pitts is Travis Kelce minus the first 3 years, I guess, then you take Kelce because that provides a bigger edge over replacement value. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, but it's an interesting conversation. You've got this player who's probably going to have the same value at least, so it's probably a low odds bet. You're not going to lose much, even if he doesn't hit year one. He's probably going to be about worth as much next year, whereas, something crazy like 60% of wide receivers lose value into their second year. But those that increase in value really fucking increase in value. So there's that as well. So I don't know how to balance that. And I know anyone that's not a nerd isn't balancing an equation. But here's where I've come out on it. It's like if Kyle Pitts is your guy, you've watched him, you've done your process, and you really think this is the guy, then like everything else, I think there's enough reasons there and enough opinions that say he's really good and that edge would be worth it, that you can draft him. You can draft him top 3, top 4. But I'm with you. I'm probably not. But there is a point where I don't want to bet on these deeper wide receivers, and so I just take Pitts. And it has risen the more information I've taken in. Typically, I'm like, never draft a tight end. But Pitts, everyone thinks Pitts is so different that so much smoke, you've got to imagine there's some fire under there. Kind of an analogy.
And so have you finished your overall rankings on these prospects yet?
Not yet. I'm about done with wide receiver. I've got, I was just pulling up. We got about 5 or 6 running backs I want to run through, and then 2 or 3 more tight ends before I finalize them. But I'm gonna be done by next Monday. I know pretty much what I think. I just don't want to miss anything, so I'm pulling in a few extras. Like I haven't looked at Yeboah. I believe you called him. I'm saying your boy because that's much fun.
That's your boy.
Much more fun. I recommend. I recommend it. And
Kenny,
there's
your
a few.
boy.
Yeah, I still got to look at Kalen Hill at running back. I've heard some good things about him, and I haven't broken them down yet. But yeah, I'm pretty set. If you were going to ask me a question, I don't know.
I'm curious how high you have Kyle Pitts, and what wide receivers would you not take him over?
That's a really good question. I don't know quite that yet, but I can come up with an answer on where I'm at right now. Like I'm not locking them in just now, but I was recently trying to put together like a rookie board, which is a really weird but fun exercise. And right now, and I was saying in a super flex with tight end premium, I would take Trevor Lawrence over him, and that creates a whole bunch of different ADP. But the only 2 wide receivers right now, I kind of have 3, but the only 2 that I'm definitely considering over Pitts is Jamar Chase and Rashad Bateman.
Okay.
And then Harris, obviously, Etienne and Williams, if the draft goes right, just because of the value of running back. And then I'm kind of thinking about Kyle Pitts right there.
Okay.
I'd probably trade out the pick if I can rather than do it because of the tight end, like we said.
Yeah.
But those are the only names right now that distinctly, I don't want to miss them. I don't want to miss on Jamar Chase for the potential of Travis Kelce, I guess, and I love Rashad Bateman as well. And then there's the value of running backs.
At the Undroppables in our consensus rankings, we have Kyle Pitts overall consensus. There's definitely a couple of guys like myself, Jax Falcone, that have him a little bit lower, but consensus we have him as number 5 overall. And really the only people in front of him, are Jamar Chase, Najee Harris, and then the 2 quarterbacks of Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. So, we're as a team definitely recognizing that he's pretty special prospect, to really only be ahead of Jamar Chase. Personally, I have him at 7, and a couple other people above him, but it's going to be a real interesting player to come into the league with this much hype. It's been a while since we've seen, some people tweet out, their overall 101, but I've definitely seen people tweet out, like top 2, top 3 wide receiver. There's only a few people ahead of them.
I have this tier 2 of wide receivers. I don't know if I want to push them above Pitts or below Pitts, but I really like him. I haven't quite, and that's the 2 Moores and Devontae Smith, your boy. And I don't know. I don't know where to put them, but those are all the wide receivers I think are interested in the first round. After that, I really like a lot of wide receivers, but they feel more like I don't want to have to spend a first round pick on them. So Pitts is definitely above that tier, but I know.
In our last show, we were talking running backs, and that was with Jay Moyer from the Fantasy Astronauts and Felix Sharp, and we really came to agreement that the running back class, as good as it is on the top, it definitely isn't very deep, and at a certain point after some of those top running backs are gone, throw Kyle Pitts in there in the first round, quarterbacks in Superflex League, then you're really kind of smashing wide receivers for a while, because there is that second tier, like you're saying, that's filled with some fantastic talent that you might want to consider putting above Kyle Pitts because they're that good, really.
They could be.
Yeah, they could be. Right. And I think, with a lot of these smaller guys too, especially, we got a class with a lot of smaller wide receiver prospects.
I'm a fan of those small guys, man. I think it's a discount. People still tilt a little too hard on size, and I'm like, BMI, we're having a conversation. Height, I think it's just been blown away.
Right.
Like I get it when they start getting down really tiny. I get it, but like Elijah Moore and Rondell Moore. These guys aren't short enough that I'm concerned. And yet people still, because again, it makes obvious sense. I mean, you're tiny. Right. But they run through their legs, you see. That's that's fine.
But it's every year that, you know, Gabriel Davis, Antonio Gandy Golden, these tall guys, you get enamored. Seth Williams right now, you know, Terrace Marshall. Those part of it. People are getting enamored with these tall guys because there's so many small wide receivers in this class. But I think the analytics team, you know, are just they've helped. I think the rest of us like look past some of that stuff that you just see on tape. Like he's so small, but like no, look at all the other measurables, all the other stuff they can do. How well the breakout age, like you mentioned earlier, for a lot of these guys, and so yeah, I'm really curious to see where a lot of these guys are going to land. Because then that's the other thing too, right? Like we have all our pre-draft process, but then once you add draft capital, landing spot into it, everything changes, right?
It does. It's like running backs are a little more prone to volatility. It's a little more important to me where they go. And I've got this really weird, like Kenny Gainwell, Chuba Hubbard, Michael Carter kind of grouping here. And it seems like everyone forgot about Hubbard, which sounds like a song. I don't know.
Love Chuba right here. Me and the Lions.
And I really like Kenny Gainwell's 1 year of production. But like, again, some of the tape people that I honestly listen to and really respect their opinion, like, they did not like everything they saw. So I don't know how you feel about him, but basically he was bound, as I understood what they were saying, he was using athleticism a little bit more than they liked because it's harder to do that in the NFL. And he wasn't doing most of the other jobs that running backs tend to be good at, like blocking and picking up schemes, I guess was the other word. And that was concerning to me because it's not something I can see. By the way, someone said in the chat they thought they broke my database when they tried to play with it once. Like, break away, man. Hit that file, make a copy, delete stuff. And someone else said, I don't know what matters. It's really good. I actually have a formula and results tab that tries to show you what matters most to what things. But the other thing is, don't worry about what other people think matter. Like, what do you want to know about? Like, do receiving yards matter? Well, delete everything fucking else. Because if you make your own copy, you can delete whatever you want, and everyone can. And just go take a look. Like, do the players that you want in every draft class have the most receiving yards or yards per reception? And you can form your own opinion. That's what I'd say. Don't try and figure out what everyone else knows matters. Go and look at the thing that you think is interesting or that you think might matter, and play around with it. See what you find. Does it matter? How much does it matter? Yeah. And I think that's the real answer. Like, I started off that way too, like trying to figure out what JJ Zacharyson already knew, and I figured out I'm never gonna know. He's smarter than me. I'm just not gonna get there. So I'm interested in percentages. I'm interested in the percentage receiving yards, like I was just doing with Pitts and Jordan. So I just literally went and took a look. Like, how many good tight ends have had a higher percentage than bad tight ends, kind of a question. And warning, if you like it, then it's a big rabbit hole, and it's not fun. No, it remains fun. Just that's what I try and say. If you have a question, you can go and answer it. And that's the way I'd approach it. Not what do I need to know? Just start with a question and then try and find the answer. And same with tape, right? Does this guy do? I would imagine, like, I've heard a lot of film grinders talk about, I want to know what they do against the best competition. And so they go and watch those particular games and come up. And that's the point. It's not like you go in knowing that matters more. You just want to see that and then form your opinion on it.
You want to answer your question. You have a question you're trying to find.
Start with a question, try and find the answer. A lot of times you will find no answer and get really, really mad. That's my experience anyway. But I mean, I find that a better way of thinking of it. As a complete amateur with no background in it, I just had questions and I tried to find answers one at a time, and I still don't have any answers.
I love that, Peter. Yeah, it's who's someone's in there. You can get intimidated by it all. Dave Toronto, FFA, what's up, man, for the comments. And that's always how I feel. It's a lot, and there's even when you get a result, right, and like see it on a graph or plot it on a chart with some nice colors and it looks nice and it's palatable. Even then, you're still like, all right, cool. What am I looking
What does that
right
mean?
Now?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. That's great. So what does that mean? Um,
I
but
understand
that's why I love interacting with you though, because you're so personable. You come hearing you talk about that, like I don't know, like I guess I don't know if you get the perception, or some people have this perception that you're just super nerd, unapproachable, or just like, wow, how can you ever have a mind like that? But like to say that or to hear that you're just coming from a place of just finding the answers, you had a problem that you were trying to solve, and you just like dove into it to try to get better at it. I mean, that's great. That's awesome to hear, because that's like, I feel that's all of us. We're just trying to get better at fantasy football.
I love the compliments. Keep them flowing. I spend most of my time insulting myself, so I like it. But I actually teach a little bit, and I tell my students the same thing, and that I tell anyone interested in looking my database that hasn't before. It's like the difference between me and you is I've read that book, and I'm going to tell you what I think about that book. But by the end of the semester, hopefully you've read that book, and so you know much as about that book as I do. That's the goal, and it's the same. Like if you're looking at my database and like there's so much, like I am you 3 years down the line if you stick with it that far. That's the difference. You don't have to, I mean, you have to be really smart to be JJ Zachariason or Matt Friedman or all the literal physics PhDs we've got in this sport at this point. But you can get there. And if it's not your game, like you just don't enjoy it, then don't use it as your hobby, man. Do the part of the process that is a fun part of the, like, why would you do anything different? You can succeed that way too. If you're playing in high stakes leagues, you're probably definitely not talking to me, so you don't need to hear about all of that. But one question leads to another. Like this graph looks good, but what does that mean? Well, how can I figure that out? Well, how about if I literally just count the number of players who have? I use top 12 seasons at tight end. Like how many of those guys at this part of the graph have had a top 12 season in PPR scoring?
Yeah.
Or you think, well, which one had higher dynasty value, or which one had whatever your question is. So yeah, that's the rabbit hole of it. One question leads to another question, and then you've forgotten the original question. You end up looking like this. But
I've seen your wedding photos. I think your wife posted it once.
Oh yeah, I was clean cut, like I was a normal looking human at one point. But I try to make that thing because I know it looks like so much. Like I put all at the front, like what they did their first year, their best year. Because I figure most people, like JJ Zachariason talks about that all the time. Look at a player's last year or look at a player's best year. And I thought that might be better. And then I realized all I'd done is add 20 columns and made it seem even larger. Like, damn it. But I try to make it as streamlined as possible and yet easy to use. But I mean, I can't make apps. We just need one of these people that make money, and they're gonna eventually it will turn me, if I'm not already, into irrelevance. Like DLF has got Addison Hayes winning on great tools. You got Player Profiler already posting up numbers in easily digestible ways, and so one of those smart guys will make something to make that easier.
Well, I love your database, your Patreon. I just subscribed this year. I was like, again, trying to just get better,
appreciate
trying
it,
to improve my process. But yeah, it was just one of those things. And I think I just bought the year because I was like, it's a great price. Like, I'm just gonna buy the year and then just, and get my information and try to get better and try to look at numbers more and manipulate the data more, or just try to teach myself some more stuff with some of the guys on the Undroppables team that help. Because literally I'm just like, hey, I have an idea. Can you look at some data and see if it matches up with my hypothesis? And let's work together, and that's what makes the team great. But your Patreon's awesome too, because the videos.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Out. And that's, hey, you support me on Patreon, I'll come on your podcast. No, that's not why. Like, I do want to make clear.
That's why he's on my podcast. I paid extra.
It feels all sticky and horrible to get money, but like I like eating. I don't know, but I will say, like, if anyone wants my help or like they have a question, I will try it. Like, it's not like you have to pay behind the Patreon wall. Like, I will try my best to help anyone. Like, if you can't afford the $1 or whatever the yearly thing is, I think it's 10.
I think $10. That's why I was just like, gonna pay. It's a great price.
Like I'll still try and help you out. Like I'll tell anyone my opinion. It's free and worth nothing. And so
you should try it sometimes. If you're out there listening, try it sometimes. Just ask me your question.
I will try. If I don't tweet like at me again and say, hey, asshole, you didn't answer my question. Like, obviously people who are so big like get so many I understand why they can't respond to anyone, but I'm a really tiny fish, so mostly I get to talk to everyone, which is nice. It's a nice place to be. I
It's a
do
great
really
place to be.
appreciate the support, but the Patreon paywall is really about the support. I do try and do certain things for them, like for you, because I really appreciate it, man. So I'm like, I want to give you some value. And so like I'm tracking my ranks, and there's an
Nice.
NFL database because I figure there's enough NFL stats out there that I'm not making them restricted because you can get them, just not specifically through me. But I just want to play fantasy football and win. It'd be great if I made money at that, but
Yeah.
like it feels the way of
Yeah,
making
man.
money at this game, as you well know, is attention. Like you sell the fact that people pay attention to you, and that's
Yes.
perfectly legitimate. It is basically our economy now, and it makes me feel icky. So like, I can't do it. So the Patreon's for support, and I will talk to and go on podcasts and answer any questions I know how to answer,
Yeah,
because
man.
I'm terrible at business. It's the ultimate answer. Like I make money, but I'm bad at it. So
No, man,
I really
it's-
do appreciate it, though, Tommy. Like
Yeah,
seriously,
man.
it matters.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't want to
it-
make
it-
you
it-
seem
it's-
like you shouldn't have done it because I appreciate it. But I also want you to know, like, if you're like, I gotta cut this off, man. I got bills. Then I'll still talk to you and help you out any way I can because you're
And
my
that's what makes it
community,
great.
man.
Yeah, that's what makes it worth it. You know, it's you don't have to buy. I followed you and I've talked, interacted with you a bunch of times on Twitter until I decided to finally just buy it. And it's and I think it was Mike was saying that you just when other smarter people, other people smarter than you, see people that can enunciate and speak, that's people smarter than me. When they're talking about it, that's what they're using when they're recommending your database, that's another reason why we go and subscribe to it. And $10 a year is nothing to the amount of information that's in there. I mean, it's great. And it's not just the database, it's the videos you put out, it's the information that you're sending to your patrons. And so again, it is besides the analytics stuff, and like I said, we had to just talk about tight end rankings just to close the loop on all these pods I've been doing. But it was really because of that too. You and Mike coming on the show, you guys have great Patreons channels that people
Mike's
need
awesome.
to subscribe to. Yeah, both of them.
Like
and there's a reason
daily.
why it's a reason why his is blown up so fast. Because it's quality content. That's what the people are here for. And that's what I'm trying to do with my podcast too, is bring great guests on that are smarter than me, that can teach me things. I always joke that I don't care if no one listens to it because I'm talking to you. So it's making me smarter, making me a better fantasy analyst. And if someone else wants to listen to it, that's awesome too. But I'm doing it selfishly for myself. So
I enjoy it.
That's out of the bag.
That was an extra $5 add-on on the Patreon to have me say that. But no, I really do enjoy it. And I we are smarter than I. Again, not pumping the free thing I don't get anything for, but that's also kind of why I've maintained it and put it out the way I have, because I don't understand half this stuff, but if everyone's looking and it's not just behind an expensive paywall somewhere, maybe we'll all figure something out together. I constantly get notes from people in that what's that thing we've got, that group, that Discord thing we've got? It's like, hey, you've got this date wrong, and hey, have you noticed this about tight ends? And I'm like, no, I did not. So same philosophy. Let's gang together and beat our friends up in fantasy football.
Hell yeah, exactly. So one last topic before we sign off for tonight. Based on your ranking so far, your models, your research, just your overall process this offseason, can you give me one prospect that you're higher on and lower on than consensus? Someone that, we should be targeting that maybe, people aren't talking enough about?
I can. I don't know what consensus is right now, so I'm kind of vamping a little bit, trying to look up rookie ADP. Where is it? I'm going to Dynasty League Football because that's the one I have easy access to. Let's see. Wide receiver is probably the easiest one for me. I don't know what's low. Right now, Tylan Wallace is wide receiver 9.
I mean, I
not low enough.
Someone I think on the pod had him at 6. So it's a little bit of
a little high. Everyone likes Elijah Moore and Tylan Wallace, and I like those guys too. Dimey Brown is a popular mention, so Seth Williams. Digging real deep, I guess. The guy I was just talking about on stream, actually, really unlikely to hit, but he's the type of guy I end up keeping an eye on the waiver wire kind of a player, and that's Chatarius Atwell. or Tutu Atwell.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's deep enough.
Yeah.
But
yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about
I like
Tutu on here. I mean, he didn't test as well, right? That's like the big hang up on him right now. People were
exactly
expecting him to be a serious burner. And I mean, if you're trusting the pro day, he's still at 4.39. So it's not, there's very few people that still hit 4.3. So I guess they just, we're expecting a little bit more from him. Speed score, like right now, playerprofiler.com isn't great, as well as the burst relative
he's
to
a
his
tiny
size.
guy.
He's a little guy.
It.
He's those guys you talk about, right? Those little guys you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of seeking Cole Beasley, Jamison Crowder level upside. The guys that for one reason or another is going to go lower drafted, or people aren't going to like because of their heights. Deep as I got is a guy who someone mentioned in that Discord was Isaiah McCoy. Again, did not test well. Like he's not going to get draft capital. He's coming from the MAC East. But a Patreon said, "Hey, have you checked him out from Kent State?" And I was like, "Nope." Yeah. So I went and looked, and in that situation, low competition and tested very badly. I forget what his pro day stats are looking like.
Wow.
Like
I mean, good size though.
200 pounds. Yes, 6'2". But that comes out to a terrible BMI. I guess that's what I'm remembering. But he was actually really productive in the MAC East. Again, this is not a guy you want to spend really even a third round pick on. But I think he was pretty interesting. I think that fellow Discord member of ours pointed something out. Like he had quick stats just to make it sound like I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. He had 32% dominator at age 19, 35% at 20. Hell, he had a 19% dominator at age 18. And that's just 3 years of being that offense at a really young age. And I like the cockiness, like a low conference player declaring after 3 years. That's like, that's like, come at me. Most like even Corey Davis played 4 years because you don't get drafted high from those kind of conferences. And Isaiah McCoy's like, nope, I done it. I kind of like maybe there's a nasty reason. I don't actually know much about this guy, but to me, it reads like confidence. It's just like, I have proved everything I can prove down here. So I'm going to go see what the NFL thinks. And I don't hate that. And like I said, 6'2", 200 pounds.
Yeah. You gotta love that size and that breakout age. And, I think I always learn things from my own podcast. Like I said, I do this selfishly for myself, so talking to you and Mike, really helped me to understand, like it's like a lot of things. It's a tool to help you formulate your picture and your valuation on players. And, the one thing that slips through the cracks, both for film and analytics, are some of these intangibles. Like you're saying, like if him declaring early, there's not a metric. I mean, yes, there is, that fits into the model, but declaring early from a lower conference, like that narrative, that's not going to fit in film or analytics, so it's like trying to find those little edges that help you in your player rankings, and something like this. Like, I'm glad you said him, because now if he goes undrafted, at least in rookie drafts, but's on a team, definitely worth a taxi.
It's at least someone to keep your eye on. Maybe he lands on a roster. Hell, maybe a round 7 pick or undrafted. But I mentioned only good names, but it could also be Tanner Gentry. He's someone I kept my eye on for a long time. Was on and off the Bears practice field. I mean, these guys don't work out often, but they're also free. The risk is relative to the cost.
Yes. Yeah. So we're not talking about like Hakeem Butler here. That's just totally going to bust, and was a big talked about guy because he was, again, so big. And
we knew
all those things.
We got an insight into that at the draft because everyone was a lot of people seemed really convinced he was good. And then the NFL was like, nah. But
I'll take Andy Isabella over. Basically
right? Yeah. And I liked Andy Isabella, just again to remind you that you get a lot of stuff wrong. Player I'm low on, I mean, people are mentioning it in the chat that I haven't talked about Waddle or Terrence Marshall, and I am lower on both of those, but I'm kind of tired of the conversation, to be honest. And Kadarius Toney as well stand out as players. I noticeably can't find much to like. The best I can say is they didn't play enough for me to really get a good opinion of their stats. They just didn't play enough.
Yeah.
And the fact they're being drafted so high without playing enough to really get a sense of who they are, for me, makes them red flags. But a player that might not jump off the board as someone I wouldn't like is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I really do love that name, by the way. Like, that family has just got a great way of naming people. Like they should patent it. But he's currently like wide receiver 8 in DLF ADP, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm high on him.
He has an age 18 breakout. Again, you'd think I'd like him. He broke out at age 18. He is pretty productive. It just reads like a disappointing profile to me, and I don't see top 12 wide receiver in it. So that's unusually low for me. You really like him though.
Yeah, but and I've admitted on this podcast a few times, it's definitely a homer ranking for me. He went to the same high school that I did, and then played at USC, which is my favorite school for college. So it's very biased opinion, you know, and I always tell people it's okay to have biased opinions as long as you tell people they're biased opinions so that they can take it with a grain of salt. Because you know, for me, he's wide receiver 8 for me. Overall wide receiver 9 undroppables consensus rankings. So we're all kind of a little bit higher on him. I think seeing a decent amount of us are West Coast guys, so we saw a lot of those USC games, and he has a knack for getting up to get the ball. But I think, you know, and we've talked about it again in this pod, once you get past like that top 5, then it starts to become a little bit like there's a lot of holes, or every guy that has something good about him has another, you know, there's a hole in his game as well too. So I think once you get into that like second half of the top 10, then it gets a little dicey on, you know, who's really going to be the better prospect, because there's a lot of things can go either way with a lot of these guys. They're good. It's just I don't know. I don't feel super confident on, you know, after that top tier.
And again, you just know the bet you're making, and again, he was really good in college for where he was playing. I'm not. Yeah. It feels more DJ Chark than DK Metcalf. Maybe that's the way of saying it. Yeah. Like he could be good and even I'm sure he could be a great NFL player, but maybe less what we're seeking most of the time. But I would love to be wrong, because I love those under the radar age 18 breakout age players. It's just right now he's wide receiver 8, so it doesn't feel like it seems disproportionate to the bet. But you might find him lower than that. It's just really stuck out to me when I was looking at DLF ADP. Nice.
Any other position, you know, prospect, quarterback or running back that you're higher on than others? This is like probably the last show we're going to do before we do our Undraftathon on draft day, going on all weekend. And then I'm going to do one more post-draft show. So this is actually the last time I'm going to talk about rookies on this show up until the draft. So before we log off, is there a quarterback and a running back that you're higher on in this draft class?
Quarterback's not. I don't do a lot of quarterback evaluation. They seem like a mystery to me. And like, what makes a good quarterback? No idea. Like, I don't know. If you've seen Philip Rivers throw, you know what I mean? But I was asked this. 4for4 did like an interview thing once, and so they asked about quarterback, and I found Kellen Mond. Like, I'm not a quarterback guy, but he's coming out at an older age, but he was pretty efficient. Didn't do much young, but he's got experience, which is also can be good, and has some level of rushing history in college. And where you're gonna get him in even super flex drafts, again, the cost kind of meets the reward.
Value. Yeah.
Outside of that, this quarterback class is talked to death. So I don't think there's anyone I can uncover. I don't know who the next Dak Prescott is, but I'm excited to find out. Running back, there are a few names in this class that are sparking for me. I'm trying to go deeper than usual, though, because you guys your audience is going to be pretty up on this class. You know what you're talking about. You've been talking about them forever. I guess one that maybe, like, have you talked about Spencer Brown a lot?
Not much at all, no.
He, like, if you want 4 receiving yards, he's going to give you 1 rushing yard. That's his thing. He is a runner, like Jarrett Patterson, who's been talked about a little bit more. So, like, he just basically ran the ball. They don't catch the ball, but he was really good at running the ball at a lower conference level. And he stood out to me a little bit. He was playing in the Cursor West. And where running backs can be drafted late and end up on a team where someone gets injured, that kind of, he was good in his situation in college, could lead to opportunity in the NFL. And the NFL loves running backs. Like, you can rush, get in here. And
in there.
It's not like I can catch a ball you throw me a ball, I'll catch it once out of 10 times. So I believe professional athletes can probably catch balls if they need to.
Yeah.
The real problem is whether the NFL will teach them the stuff they weren't doing in college. So it's not like they couldn't get some receptions and have a decent receiving floor. I mean, Melvin Gordon taught us that. But he's probably just a rusher. But I think he was pretty good, and he's pretty deep, and I don't hear about him a lot.
No.
And yeah.
Nice. Love that. Love that, Peter. And then so for last bit for tonight, before I let you go, we have a tradition here at the 2-on-1 Fantasy Sports to leave some free nuggets for our listeners, and that's just any words of wisdom or advice that you have. Could be for rookie drafts or just fantasy football in general, or anything really.
All right. I have no wisdom, just to be real clear, and like none. But no, I was thinking the other day, like, about just Twitter or interacting in this community in general. Like, if you want to get involved, come in. The water's fine. Like, that's how you join. Like, I get asked, how'd you get to where you are? Well, I started posting on Twitter. Now I'm still posting on Twitter, and that's when you ask me this question. Like, it's just get involved.
Yeah.
But I do see. I don't know. I was trying to. I'm not trying to be negative about anyone, but or anything at all. But like, I think if people like following me, it's probably for the free data, but it's also because I try to say things that are going to be true now and later. Like, I don't know, like you were saying, like you tell them there's a homer pick here, there's some grain of salt you should throw on this. Like, so I try to provide what's definitely true. This is a number. Here's what I think of it, and try to provide a separation. Like, I can say what I say about players now is true now, and it will be true after the draft. My opinions, I freely admit, are trash. I suck. I get it, but I'll offer you those too if you want. So try to stick to some sort of core like that. Like, you try to be honest. Don't try to have good takes or pick out the next James Robinson. It's just, you can try to do that, but try to offer honesty and then takes. Maybe that's the way of saying it.
Yeah.
As for rookie drafts, like, the more I go into playing fantasy football, I think the real answer is here. The rookie drafts are where you can just, quote unquote, get your guy. Like, I want players I like to fall to me. Don't get me wrong. I love drafting Denzel Mims and JJ Arcega-Whiteside and KJ Hamler and Andy Isabella late at a value.
Yeah.
But the real answer is probably, for 2021, if you want a wide receiver, trade up to get Chase. Like, I love Bateman too. He's in the same tier for me. If Bateman's a guy, go get him. So I think, unlike with startup drafts, we tend to think trade back, gain value in Dynasty. In rookie drafts, I think we should be free to just trade up. Like, it's almost the opposite. Like, go get Saquon Barkley. That's the play there. Don't hope you get Nick Chubb later. Go get Saquon Barkley.
Get your guy.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's not often in Dynasty we don't have to worry about value, and we still have to worry about value in rookie drafts, but I think we're a little more free. There's such a low hit rate. Some positions take so long to really pay off that I think we should be a little more willing to just, like you say, just go get Jamar Chase if you want a wide receiver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Like last year, go get Justin Jefferson or Jalen Reagor, because it could not work out. And I had them in the same tier, okay? CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Reagor, and Justin Jefferson, I love them all just as much. And so I had like a 2 out of 3 shot, and I guarantee I probably would have hit the wrong one. But I think it's the right attitude for rookie drafts. I have no wisdom. If you have,
you do. Ton of wisdom.
But that's the best I can come up with. Trade up to get your guy in rookie drafts and just try to be honest.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not about other people are not honest. It's just I feel no, I don't know how to say this, but like, I don't think I have I have no fear. Like, someone can tell me I'm wrong. I'm like, yep, definitely I'm wrong. And I'm not afraid of that because I also know what I said was true. Yeah. And instead of trying to get the rankings right or find the sleeper, just offer your opinion and the information you use to form it. And I think that's what we all like. Like you were saying, that's what you want to do. That's what Mike wants to do. Outside of that, it's entertainment. And like, I don't know how to be entertaining, so I can't tell you that. But I think you probably get it a lot. Like, how do I get involved? Or how do I do this? It's real simple. It's just start. Water's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
At me, I'll happily talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Or at you. You're very good at communicating and really fun to talk to. And the other thing is try to find like some sort of core. And for me, it's just I don't know if that helps anyone else, but I think just try and say what's true and then offer an opinion on it and make sure everyone knows your opinion sucks. Like that's the core.
Set the bar low.
It can be wrong a lot. Here's a history of how much I've sucked, but I'm having my fun, you know.
Oh yeah, that's what it's about for sure. Yeah, they the great free nuggets. Because it's and you're right. People have asked how you get in there. It's jump in there, jump in with 2 feet and sink or swim.
Twitter is
Sometimes.
free. That's the most
Right. It's a
amazing thing
free
in the
app,
world.
and there's some amazing stuff and there's some terrible stuff, and you just gravitate towards the good stuff. And Peter's one of those guys. Same with Mike Lou. Make sure you're following both of them on Twitter at Pa Howdy with the tip of the hat, his signature GIF.
Yes, sir.
And Mike me up with 2 P's. I definitely messed that one up on the intro, but thank you both, Mike out there, Peter, still here with me today. Thank you both for joining me on the 2-on-1, a fantasy sports podcast presented by the Undroppables. And make sure you like and subscribe below and go wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to both Peter Howard and Mike Lou's YouTube channels, and type in the Undroppables in the search bar and subscribe to all 4 of the great podcasts in the Undroppables network of podcasts. Leave a rating and a review while you're at it. And until next time, Peter, appreciate it. And thank you for stopping by the 2-on-1. Peace.
Anytime, man. Thank you.